Power doesn't come from titles or threats, it comes from how you treat people. Linda used her position to bully. Rachel used her silence and strength to serve. Sometimes, the loudest person in the room isn't the one you should fear, the quiet one who already earned everyone's respect. We had just moved into our dream home, a quiet cul-de-sac on the edge of town, surrounded by trees, good air, and space to breathe. The house was outside the HOA boundaries. We made sure of it when we bought. My wife Rachel, a recently retired Army Sergeant Major with 25 years of service, just wanted peace. And after all, she'd seen the noise of helicopters, the weight of decisions no one should have to make. The funerals of soldiers she called family. Rachel didn't want conflict anymore. She wanted mornings with coffee and birdsong, not battle plans. She wanted to prune flowers, not protocols. But people like Linda didn't recognize quiet strength. They only saw what they thought they could control. But peace wasn't something Linda, the self-appointed HOA president across the street, believed in. From the moment our moving truck rolled in, Linda was watching. Clipboard, sunglasses, that tight smile like she was already writing a complaint. First it was, you need to remove those garden flags. They're not HOA approved. Then, your truck's too big. It'll damage the curb. Rachel simply replied, we're not in the HOA, ma'am, and kept unloading boxes. But Linda didn't back down. She upped the pressure. Within a week, we got 3 typed notices demanding HOA dues, fines for imaginary violations, and threats of legal action. We ignored them. Rachel was calm. She'd faced war zones. Linda's suburban tyranny wasn't going to break her. But one morning, things escalated. We were working in the yard, Rachel pulling weeds in cargo pants and a faded army tee, when Linda marched over. You are required to attend the HOA meeting tonight or you'll be fined, she barked. Rachel stood up, wiped her hands, and simply said, again, we're not in your HOA. That's when Linda snapped. She stormed off, phone in hand, yelling, we'll let the authorities decide. 20 minutes later, 2 police cruisers rolled up. I braced for drama. Linda came trotting out like she was about to win the neighborhood championship. Officers. That's the woman, she said, pointing at Rachel. She's refusing lawful HOA compliance and trespassing on restricted common land. The officers stepped out, looked at Rachel, then both straightened, snapped to attention, and saluted. Good morning, Sergeant Major, one said with a smile. Ma'am, it's an honor. Linda froze mid-rant. Her face turned ghost white. You see, Rachel isn't just a retired vet. She's a decorated war hero, Medal of Honor recipient, the chief of police's goddaughter. She didn't go around advertising it, but the officers knew exactly who she was. I'm sorry, ma'am, said the lead officer, turning to Rachel. We got a call about a disturbance. Clearly a misunderstanding. Mind if we ask a few questions? Rachel nodded calmly. Of course, officers. Linda tried to interrupt. She's lying. I have the papers. Ma'am, the officer said sharply. Step back. Rachel invited the officers in for tea while Linda stood outside steaming. But that wasn't the end. Rachel, being who she is, didn't want revenge. But the cops, they did some digging. Turns out Linda had been forging HOA boundaries for years, harassing homeowners, and issuing fake fines. She'd pocketed thousands under the table, making up rules as she went. She even forged documents trying to annex homes into the HOA to boost her own property's value and control. The very next day, the city zoning commission got involved. Rachel didn't say a word. But suddenly, there were inspectors on every corner. HOA records got audited. Neighbors started whispering. By sundown, Linda's reign was over. The cops came back this time with a warrant. Linda was arrested for fraud, harassment, and impersonation of an officer of the HOA, which, as it turns out, isn't a real government entity. But her documents said otherwise. Neighbors gathered on the street as she was led away. One of them clapped, then another. Even people we hadn't met yet started cheering. Rachel, she stayed inside, didn't want a scene. Later that night, the chief of police showed up personally, brought flowers, hugged Rachel like a father. Thank you for how you handled this, he said. You showed more restraint than I ever could have. Rachel just smiled. I didn't fight for this country to be feared, she said. I fought so people could live in peace, even people like Linda. We never got another HOA notice again, and the neighborhood, it changed. People came by to say hi, to thank her, to ask about her garden, and suddenly the street didn't feel like a battleground anymore. It felt like home. The few days after Linda's arrest were unusually quiet. For the first time since we moved in, the neighborhood actually felt peaceful. No passive notes, no violation notices taped to our mailbox, no unwanted surveillance from behind hedges. People began waving when they passed by. Some came over to apologize. Others just stood awkwardly on the sidewalk, unsure how to say thank you, until Rachel gave them that small, understanding nod that said, "It's okay, we all make choices." But the truth was, things had shifted. Word spread fast about who Rachel really was. Not just the Medal of Honor recipient, not just the chief's goddaughter, not just the woman who stood calmly while a fake tyrant tried to bulldoze her with power she never had, but someone who had lived through far worse, and still chose peace. The same neighbors who once avoided eye contact were now asking her for gardening tips, inviting us to block parties, or simply stopping to say, "Thank you for your service." And through it all, Rachel never once brought up what happened. She didn't gloat. She didn't rant. She didn't need to. Her silence said everything. You see, Rachel believed in something bigger than neighborhood politics. She fought for a country where even people like Linda had the right to speak, but also a country where truth, dignity, and justice would always win in the end. Linda had tried to rule with fear, but fear is loud, messy, desperate. Real strength, it's calm, it's quiet. It shows up in moments of restraint, not rage. And in the end, the same woman who tried to shame Rachel ended up being escorted out of the neighborhood in handcuffs, while Rachel stood on the porch, sipping tea with her boots off, watching the sunset like nothing ever happened. That image, right there, stuck with me. Because sometimes, the strongest form of resistance isn't fighting back with fists or fury, it's standing still while the storm passes, untouched. I learned something from Rachel in those weeks. That real honor doesn't shout. It doesn't argue with fools. It doesn't need to prove anything. It just lives quietly, peacefully, like a rock that doesn't move. Even when the waves crash